Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Will, Ecosystem Growth Manager here at Oasis Protocol. I'm joined today by Nino from Apillon. We have a nice workshop going over the privacy for Web3 hackathon, Oasis Sapphire, as well as what Apillon is building with their embedded wallet. I guess, Nino, do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself, and then we can get into, I guess, the demos?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for hosting us. My name is Nino. Like I said, I'm a Chief Product Officer at Apillon. I've been in crypto since 2016, 17. Used to work at different companies before. We're mostly working with, either crypto trading. And then 2 years ago or so, I entered Web3. Apillon was my first Web3 project. And since then, we're building Web3 development platform, which I will introduce over slides, show you a little bit how Apillon works, what we're all about, and then we're going to demo the embedded wallets we've built on Oasis. And I'm going to give you some pointers specifically for this hackathon and what we're looking for, maybe give you some ideas. That's the plan for today. I'm going to try to be fast and really focused. If you guys have any questions in between, feel free to enter them into chat and I will stop and answer them. But definitely I will give you 10, 15 minutes at the end to ask me whatever I am possibly able to answer.
Yeah, and this is the first time we're demoing the embedded wallet, right, to the community. I know we did it on a internal call once, but I think this is the first time we're showing it to the community. So that's exciting. I've been saying for the last couple weeks, I don't know why, but I've been on a sort of UI UX improvement kick in Web3. Like, this is the thing that we need to solve the most. And I've been really excited what Apillon built, and I think this is the direction that the entire industry needs to move in if we want to bring in the next sort of cohort of users that maybe are not as willing to deal with hundreds of transactions on MetaMask like we are.
Yeah, I agree fully. From our perspective, I feel this is like one of the best or probably more impactful services we've built because it's really general. It can be general used, and it's the first stepping stone of anyone entering Web3, which is currently quite it has a lot of friction. So yeah, I'll demo what we have, and I hope you guys will get it, how cool it is, or get excited as I am.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody will. Yeah, I was actually, if it's okay, I was gonna do a brief presentation on Oasis Sapphire,
of course,
and then get into what you guys are doing. Entire screen. 1 second. So we've done this presentation a few times now, so I'm going to go a little bit faster through it, but just to give everyone who's building in the hackathon an idea of what sort of Sapphire confidential EVM is and why we think it's so cool, and why it should be an amazing platform to build your hackathon projects. First, though, a little bit of information about the hackathon. It ends, I think, November 1st, so we still have a pretty good amount of time, 3 more weeks to submit your projects. There's $130,000 in prizes. 30,000, I think, are the main track prizes, which can leverage the Sapphire confidential EVM, the Oasis privacy layer, or our Raffle technology. And then our amazing partners like Apillon, like Aether, DDoB, Ocean. Now I feel Pixel Realm. Hopefully I don't forget anyone. They're all have their own sponsored tracks. As well, where you can essentially submit to the Sapphire track, and then if you build something leveraging Apillon, win additional prize money or incentive bonuses. So let's get into the Sapphire confidential EVM. I guess the best place to start is with what the Oasis architecture is. So Oasis is a modular layer 1 blockchain that in a lot of ways can be thought of as similar to like a Polkadot or ETH 2.0, where we have an underlying consensus chain, which is analogous to the relay chain on Polkadot or analogous to the beacon chain on ETH 2.0. And then on top of that, we have parallel runtimes, which we call paratimes. But in many ways, they can be thought of as like a roll-up or as a parachain. Basically, they're the ones doing the computation and the execution, and then they're submitting proofs to our consensus layer. The proofs that they submit are bare metal proofs instead of like optimistic or validity proofs on Ethereum. But in a lot of ways, it can be thought of as a roll-up. The major difference, I would say, is just the flexibility in terms of the fact that it supports, different types of confidential computation, and as well as like the degree of modularity. So our consensus layer is only able to handle smart contracts for staking and for, the verification from the execution layer. There's no smart contract support in our consensus layer beyond that. And that allows us to get very scalable, as well as have like instant finality. So basically, I guess TLDR, Oasis is very similar to Ethereum or Polkadot in its consensus, but a little bit more flexible, which is what allows us to do some of this confidential EVM stuff. Sapphire is one of our parallel runtimes. It's the one that we've been focusing on, and it's the focus of this hackathon. It's our confidential EVM. So smart contracts are executed in a trusted execution environment, which every validator node on the network holds or hosts within their validator network, their validator node setup. Basically, trusted execution environments act as a black box, which the validator can't see inside. So by default, all transaction data is encrypted on the Oasis Sapphire network. It goes inside this black box, then it gets decrypted, and then we just operate like a normal EVM, and then it gets re-encrypted on the output side based on the specifications of the smart contract or the preference of the user. So what that means is you can build dApps on Oasis that are entirely confidential. You can build dApps that are entirely transparent, or you can build dApps that are somewhere on the spectrum in between. And what I like to say is really the spectrum in between is what Web3 has been missing, but it's also like where the interesting use cases occur. Because if you think about any sort of Web 2 application that you consider useful, it probably has some aspects of confidentiality and some aspects of transparency. The one that I used in the talk the other day was Uber, and I'll probably use Uber again. But like if you imagine like with Uber, you need the ability to share your location with your Uber driver and with Uber, the app itself. But you also want to hide that GPS location. Maybe you don't want anyone in the world to know where you are at any point in time. I also use the example of Facebook. With Facebook, you want the ability to share your social media posts and your content with those who are on your friend list, but you also want the ability to block people, right? And so I implore people to really think about like this in any sort of Web2 dApp. You'll see aspects of confidentiality and aspects of transparency. And it sort of has been difficult in Web3 thus far. It's not so easy to do, but with the Oasis Sapphire network, it's fairly trivial. And so I think that's one of the cool things about this hackathon, and it allows people to build dApps that aren't possible anywhere else. The other aspect is beyond just execution. It also has encrypted storage, so you can have confidential state on the Sapphire network. This has some information about how the confidentiality works. I won't get into that for today. This is going over again the idea of like 99% of useful applications in the world are in this sort of intersection of transparent and private. Very few applications are entirely transparent or entirely private. So what are some use cases? DeFi, AI agents, verified credentials, gaming, trustless oracles. That's more for the raffle section. But, all of these things sort of can benefit from confidentiality and the sort of flexibility the Sapphire network offers. For example, in DeFi, the idea to build creating sealed bid auctions where you have an auction mechanism where you can't see what other people are bidding leads to better outcomes. And this is, I think A16Z did a 5 series breakdown on sealed bid auctions and what their impact would have in the crypto space. And in fact, it became more important to do sealed bid auctions in crypto because of things like MEV. And so that's one example. Dark pools are heavily leveraged in sort of traditional markets for OTC deals and things of that nature. Again, doesn't exist in Web3 as of yet, so maybe a good hackathon idea. Verified credentials, expanding the idea of Vitalik's soulbound token so that you actually have a soulbound token that you own the private data for, and then you have the ability to selectively disclose and grant and revoke access to that private data. These are just some ideas and use cases of what's possible on Sapphire. So the next step is talking about Opal. So basically what happened is, we launched Sapphire, but we quickly realized we don't just want people to be able to leverage confidentiality, in this sort of siloed blockchain. We got to find ways to also empower people on other networks. And so the idea of Opal is to connect Sapphire with other popular EVM networks, Ethereum, BNB, Polygon. And we're connected to a ton now. But connected through cross-chain messaging bridges. Currently, right now, we have Router and Seller IM. In the future, with Raffle, you might be able to run light clients and just read directly the blockchain, so you don't even need cross-chain messaging. But the idea is that you can connect an application running on a different network to the Sapphire network and sort of offload your confidential computation needs here. So one example that we thought that makes a lot of sense would be confidential governance. Maybe you have a DAO on Ethereum, your assets are on Ethereum, your users on Ethereum. You don't want to move away from Ethereum, but you need the ability to have a confidential vote to remove bias. And I think Ari Jules and some other people in the sort of research space have shown that confidential voting improves decentralization. So this is something that likely will start happening more and more in the future. But yeah, again, you don't want to leave Ethereum. So what you can do instead is build a parallel governance mechanism on Sapphire and allow people to submit encrypted votes there, which then at the end of the voting period will send a message back to the Ethereum network and trigger or not trigger the upgrade based on what the outcome of those votes are. That's one use case that we saw where you can basically connect dApps, and the way I think about it is in 2021, 2022, the idea was modular blockchains, separating different aspects of the blockchain from one another, consensus and execution at Oasis. I think in the future we'll see modular dApps. So you can imagine a dApp where confidentiality is done on Sapphire. Let's say your arbitrary execution is done on Arbitrum, and maybe your settlement is done on Ethereum or something like that. And so this is sort of the idea of the Oasis privacy layer. This is a larger picture displaying that idea. And yeah, there's some more information here about the smart contracts library and all that. And the last thing I'm going to talk today, because I'm sort of hogging the time, is the Raffle runtime off-chain logic. It's our latest product. Raffle is a framework which extends to runtimes like Sapphire with support for off-chain components. These off-chain components mean that we can do more flexible computation, we can do more complex computation, we can do computation that's non-deterministic, which is impossible on-chain, and which allows access to remote networks resources, for example, like an HTTPS TLS session. The components are secured by the same Oasis TEs, the consensus layer, and the decentralized validator set. So this means that there's no need to install anything new. Just the Oasis core nodes and runtime bundles are currently necessary to run Raffle. And it's currently live on Sapphire. However, it can be extended to other confidential runtimes, for example, our Cypher network. This is just a demo of that. So right now with Raffle, you can, for example, connect to a remote API with an HTTPS session key, then have it sort of run computation in Raffle, and then submit transactions or receive transactions based on on-chain logic on Sapphire. Any other use case that really makes a lot of sense to us is like running a light client node for Ethereum 2 or Bitcoin. So you can have a smart contract on Sapphire, which is essentially reading the Bitcoin or Ethereum 2 blockchain, and then be able to make actions on them. And if those actions require like confidential computation or confidential logic, it can be quite interesting in the future with Raffle 2.0, which I hope is coming soon. All signs say it is. That we'll be able to actually even run like LLMs or machine learning algorithms within Raffle, which I think the whole AI space is pretty interesting, and the whole Web3 space has their focus there. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this aspect of confidential compute, blockchain, and AI all sort of intersect. Some Raffle use cases for people in the hackathon: decentralized AI and autonomous agents, oracles, bridges, light clients, intent solvers, and chain abstraction. using it for defense in depth for decentralized sequencers and ZK provers, and much more. So, what I sort of summarize Raffle as is Raffle helps extend the sophistication and user experiences that are capable for Web3 dApps, so that as an industry, we may better compete with the functionality that currently exists in Web 2. Okay, that's it for me. And I'm sorry, Nino, for taking so much time, but it's on to you and the Apillon demo.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's kick this off. Are my slides moving? Is it okay?
Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Perfect. So Apillon is a Web3 development platform. We are primarily focused on building within Polkadot. So for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with Polkadot, I will be talking about some parachains that we are utilizing. Think of them as app chains, so very specific use case oriented chains that run in parallel. And we look at them as specific microservices, which we then integrate into Apillon. And I'll go into this over the slides. But generally speaking, what Apillon is solving within Web3 context is very clear that a lot is happening. A lot of efforts are going into layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, and then above on the application layer or just beneath the application layer, there is little to no real tooling, which is kind of needed to bring the adoption over vast amount of developers who are iterating much faster than they would if they're building on layer 2, and then over this quick iteration and multiple dApps being quickly built, we will find a specific use case and make Web3 commercially successful. So this is how we are kind of thinking. Regardless of that, how do we see ourselves as a specific tool? So if we look at Web 1, Web 2, for those of you who are familiar with cPanel was great. It changed basically how internet and how everything was developed, because it actually used open source solutions to put them in a nice, neat little package where no coding was really needed. You would just click MySQL database and it would get automatically provisioned in the background. So you would get all your building blocks simply by clicking, with automatic orchestration or provisioning in the background, and you would be able to deploy WordPress and start building something on web. So this is very crucial inspiration for us. Then we also have in Web 2 a good case for this is Firebase. So again, a lot of things are provisioned and really prepared in a sense where a front-end developer can achieve production-grade, scalable apps just by connecting via API, using the SDK, having the good documentation, and the product is ready made for this kind of building. So going through this analogy, this is what we want to provide with Apillon. How do we do this? So basically, we have very simple APIs and SDK. We also have a CLI. So if you're using our API SDK, what can you expect? Well, essentially, you can expect you will build stuff like you would in Web 2. Essentially, you can use any JavaScript framework, Next.js, React, Vue, so whatever you're really familiar with, utilize our SDK and immediately start getting some results. Besides that, we also have a lot of pre-built solutions, which we recently renamed to Simplets, which are pre-made Docker images with front-end, back-end, and still relying heavily on the existing frameworks from Web 2. So we use SQL, Node.js, and typical front-end. And these packages are written, open sourced, and you can take them and just deploy them to your infrastructure and start modifying them. We'll go into the use cases that we have over our Simplets, and I'm going to maybe show you some of them. But essentially, going then, obviously, we also have documentation, community-driven governance, but at the end of the day, we also handle the payments. So if your product built on Apillon would extend across several chains and it would utilize several chains, you as a developer, you do not have to have those tokens. You do not have to have a specific token and fill them up into your bags once they're depleted. We're the ones who are handling payment. We're the ones who are handling scaling, and you basically can pay over a credit card. So this makes us a typical SaaS company. Now, obviously, I mentioned credit cards. It is also imperative to mention our freemium plan, which is ultra generous. We are doing some price dumping on our competitors. So if you enter utilize our freemium plan, you will be able to build a solid app and scale to quite few thousand users before you have to engage with any sort of payment. So in front of us, we have our offering. So this is what it is currently available on Apillon. Disclaimer, 2 or 3 features of here are coming in next few weeks. But how does this look like? So we have 3 main branches. We have services, which is the first vertical. And with services, basically we're targeting developers, which should approach our services as a la carte. So if you need just the storage, you might take just the storage. If you want to host your, let's say, Web3 website or Web3 dApp, you can go into hosting, connect your domain, you will get SSL certificate, and the website will be fully functional. Example of this would be Apillon.io, which is basically hosted from IPFS on top of Cross Network, and our website is hosted with our own hosting. So the first branch, services, really targeted towards developers. And we believe that once we release the new services, such as RPCs, embedded wallets, etc., we will meet the threshold of being able to build your whole dApp within Apillon, of not leaving Apillon, but really having everything you need in one single endpoint, having everything you need within the API and SDK, and just keep building. So this is really, we are targeting front-end devs who want to experiment. You're more than welcome to come and see how this works. The second branch, which I mentioned before, so we used to call this pre-built solutions. Now we call them simplets. These are open source Docker images. You can find them on our GitHub, which are very use case driven, right? So the idea here is you take a simplet, you install it to your infrastructure like you would, for example, WordPress. You would get front end, back end, and admin panel, which, for example, if let's say you are going to an event and you have a booth there and you want to do proof of attendance NFTs, how you would approach within Apillon is basically you create an NFT collection simply by clicking some no real coding required. Then you would deploy a simplet, which is a pre-made Docker image. And as you would enter admin, you would just choose the NFT collection you just created. Then what we provide you is with basically 2 websites. And one of them is a QR code switcher, which you put on your boot on your iPad, and users are able to scan this. The QR code automatically switches every 10 seconds. Then a user lands on a page where they can reserve the NFT over the email. So we're suspecting over our simplet that if you're experimenting with this, not all of your users will have wallets. So we're able also to do the reservation, the minting without gas, stuff like that. Essentially, so what I'm describing here is abstraction on top of abstraction. So if our services are abstracting away the heavy lifting we do on the backend when we're connecting to a specific chain, our simplets are basically consuming our services and setting an example of how you would approach a specific dApp. And then obviously the third branch are smart contracts. I will not go into details here, but with smart contracts, we want to support standard smart contracts and give you ability to deploy them where, again, we take care of all the payments and scaling, and you can interact further just with the credits. I now have just a few slides to make this more tangible. So when we're talking about Apillon, Apillon is not a parachain. Like I said before, we are a SaaS company. And how we approached basically the integration from primarily Polkadot is by cherry picking the parachains, which provide specific use case that would make sense in a Web3 development platform. So that's why we started with Web3 storage, Web3 hosting, which also brings us to NFT metadata hosting. And this is all derived from Crust. Crust is a parachain living on Polkadot. Then further, we have Web3 identity. For those of you who are familiar with DIDs, Kilt is a parachain that introduces DIDs according to the W3C standard. So we basically integrated Kilt, built a simple OAuth-like component, which you can include into your dApp. And essentially what this does is it attests user email, and according to attestation, it issues a DID, which is then usable further, and it comes with all the benefits DIDs have. If you are unfamiliar with DIDs, please do check W3C standard on DIDs. It is really, really cool. On Web3 compute and Web3 cloud functions, this is quite similar to what we just heard from Oasis. So trusted execution environment on demand. So with this integrations, we are providing very simple UIs where you can either write Rust FAT contracts and deploy them to Fala, which then execute some sort of compute, or even easier approach would be over our Web3 cloud functions, where you can basically deploy whole Node.js projects into AccuRest and have a persistent Web3 backend, basically. So it is not how we're integrating AccuRest in this specific case is where you get a persistent backend. So we're trying to simulate like something, like a backend you would build on Web 2, but instead this is now happening inside TEE. And it's also unstoppable because it is able to jump between different hosts or nodes, which obviously are running TEE. Going further, these are all the projects we integrated. So for simplets and for our NFTs, we have you have several choices. So you can either go down the Moonbeam or Astor route, which are both EVM. So if you understand EVM, then this is what you will get. It's ERC 721. Then we have Unique, which is a specific parachain within Polkadot. And instead of using smart contracts, they are using pallets. Again, very Polkadot focused thing. And for RPCs, indexers, etc., here we act mostly as a reseller with zero margin. So we have good partners who are providing insane RPC and indexing services, and we brought them into our dashboard for your convenience. Now, going to the topic of today, like I said, initially, embedded wallets, one of the greatest features we probably built, not just because they are cool, but because I believe every developer who starts by developing a dApp first has to tackle a way of how do users connect to this dApp, whether they have the wallet already. But even harder thing to solve is onboarding users who are unfamiliar with wallets. So our embedded wallets built on top of Oasis network. I'm going to demo this today, and I think you will get the point really quickly why I believe this is so cool. So going a little bit deeper into wallets, what are we actually solving with this specific service? We all understand that if users are entering Web3 and they have to create a wallet, and if this wallet is self-custodial, they will encounter either private keys or mnemonics. And this is usually where the friction happens. Users do not really understand what is going on. They have to sometimes install certain extensions like MetaMask, and it becomes tricky. So if you have a user who is not really paying attention and not thinking about the mnemonics, it might happen, in the future that this will get lost. So it can be insecure in this way. Or you will have a user who will pay too much attention and they will, maybe opt out or never finish the onboarding and never really install the extension. Therefore, you will lose this user. So we have this huge negative impact on user experience, which affects the adoption of Web3. So yeah, we met Oasis guys. We started talking. There was some idea on how to utilize these TEs. How do we bridge this thing of not actually bridge, but how do we solve this thing of having private keys and mnemonics in the user onboarding? And we kind of came together and started building this thing. I would say early summer this year. And at this point, we have a working demo, and I can say embedded wallets will get production release on 23rd of October. So you will be able to log into Apillon and start using the SDK and integrate these wallets into your solutions. So how do embedded wallets work? Basically, it provides a completely seamless wallet creation, which of course affects the onboarding process. So it's very user friendly. It's very much what users are familiar with coming from Web 2. It is heavily relying on passkey authentication for secure access, and you can use one wallet on multiple instances of this integration, which is kind of different from other embedded wallets. So we do have, how to say, an advantage here compared to other embedded wallets out there on the market. Security-wise, I would say this is as secure as MetaMask, if not even slightly more secure due to the passkey. And from the perspective of long-term support, we are seeing in the past few months that passkey is getting a lot of support from bigger clients and from enterprises. So there's a really nice bet that this will sustain quite some time. And it's becoming obvious that, for example, Chrome is trying to support passkey over Android devices and have this like a seamless integration. So we'll see how much we can expand on that. But it looks like users will be able to log in, on desktop and then confirm the passkey on mobile. This is already possible today if you do the Bluetooth connection. But once Chrome is able to talk to the Android device directly, well, then we have some really magical stuff happening. All right, so this is a comparison to other competitors out there. We have ThirdWeb, Dynamic, XYZ, Coinbase, where we definitely have an advantage is wallet scope. So all of other providers will generate new wallets for users per app. So every SDK integration will generate a new wallet for user. So they cannot be interchangeable, while embedded wallets built on Oasis are global. So this is probably the biggest advantage right now, but we also see other options once we start really upgrading this solution. So what's happening under the hood? As the new user onboards the app, user connects with their passkey. Essentially, before that, user enters their email. So email is used as an identifier for us to actually figure out which part do we decrypt using the passkey on the device of the user. And email is also an identifier if user was to log off and then come back to this app and try to log in, they would again enter the email. So the email has this role of being, it's like it acts more like a username in this situation. So we have this fancy SDK, which then requests a specific key pair change on a supported EVM chain. And as the request comes back, obviously the private key is then encrypted in a confidential smart contract built on Oasis using passkey as a source of encryption. So this is really top level view, but essentially this is what's happening in the background. So right now I'm gonna do the demo. Let me just quickly share my whole screen. All right, perfect. So this is the demo. You can also go over the demo just by entering nino.ninja. This is you can test the wallet out here. You may even reuse it, but there are some caveats, and I'm going to show you. So first of all, imagine you have a dApp. It could be any dApp. It could be NFTs or a marketplace, whatever you are building. And what you would get on the top right corner, essentially, instead of connect, you would have sign in. So now the first step is you ask user for an email. And as user enters the email, the email is confirmed. So we just make sure we're generating wallet on an actual email. But in the demo, this is hard coded. So if you're testing this as well on your end, feel free to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. And once you enter this, so this part is not hard coded. This is now the real deal. Passkey is popped up. So now I'm on Windows laptop, which doesn't have a fingerprint scanner, but I will use PIN instead. So as I enter PIN, the passkey is saved. And basically the SDK is now generating new EVM public-private key pair on a target chain. In this case, this is Moonbase. And we will soon see the wallet is generated. So now this is the wallet, which is encrypted with the passkey I just shown you and is connected to this specific email. So now I could immediately start sending or minting, or you could send, assets to this specific address. And we can also check this. So if we go to Moonbase faucet, Moonbase is a testnet of Moonbeam, just for a little bit of context. And I can now request some tokens to be sent to this address. And after a while, it will appear here, and I will show you. But regarding, let's say we already have the assets, or we just want to sign the message, what's going to happen is, as I approve this, it will pop up. So now if you are on a laptop that has fingerprint reader, or if you have your computer connected to your phone over Bluetooth, you could use your fingerprint, just tap it, and it would be done. In my case, I'm entering PIN, and the message is signed. So yeah, it is that simple. And maybe the final part of this test would be, let's say a user is disconnected and comes back to your website with the wallet integration and presses sign in. Well, in this case, if I enter the same email and I press continue, like I said, email is used as an identifier, and now PIN is used to decrypt. And we are back in the same wallet. And as we can see now, the total amount of DEF tokens, this is not Ether. So yeah, it is a demo, but it doesn't matter. We did receive the funds, and now I could start sending this around, and each time passkey would pop up, and the process would repeat. So yeah, this is essentially how what you will get if you use our SDK. And probably by now you understand why I'm super excited about this specific feature, because it really does change the onboarding process. And once you understand how things work, and if you trust Oasis like we do, and you see the benefit of passkeys long run, then you will quickly understand that this solution is really, really insane from this perspective. So yeah, going forward, regarding the hackathon, or maybe wait, let me see. Are there any questions that I could answer at this point?
I don't think any questions yet.
Okay.
But I guess that's good to have an open call for anyone who's watching in the audience. Yeah, please ask some questions. If not, though, I guess I have questions, but maybe I'll get to those at the end.
Okay. So let's also deal with the hackathon part. Like Will introduced at the beginning, Apillon is also a part of Oasis Hackathon, specifically with our embedded wallet solution. Our total budget for this hackathon is $5,000, split amongst the first three rewards. And we have some ideas of what you guys could do with our embedded wallets to make them better. So we are releasing on 23rd of October the basic SDK and a service on Apillon, which will provide you with automatic payments as well. But if these wallets were to be upgraded, these are few of the angles we found. So definitely a very interesting part is to generate a Bitcoin private key and sign Bitcoin transactions. So right now we are supporting EVM. Soon we will support the whole Polkadot stack. And then further out, we want to expand and support more and more chains, because having such a solution, it should not be isolated to one specific chain. It should be, very chain agnostic or multi-chain supported. So yeah, that's the first idea. The second one is what can be used as an additional authentication method. So it could be that the passkey is just one of the options, which becomes configurable within the SDK, and the developer or the integrator may choose what kind of authentication option they are looking for. It could also be very old school email password. It could also probably work. So you could expand on our SDK with other authentication methods. And it is worth mentioning that right now in this SDK, we have not integrated any methods of recovery, such as social recovery or appointing some other way or authentication method to recover your wallet in the case you lose access to passkey. So this is also one really, really nice angle. And going from the SDK, which is open sourced, and the smart contracts, which are also open sourced, you will get access to everything we have built. And maybe, it will give you further ideas on how to expand. Additional ideas obviously integrate with ERC 4337, allowing users to cover transaction fees more flexibly without needing to hold native tokens. Maybe upgrade the smart contracts to allow a single user to manage and control multiple wallets and private keys. Obviously, enhancing the project by improving documentation, refining testing process, optimizing deployment scripts, making code improvements. So if you're really into code perfection or some sort of auditing, we would love to hear your opinion. But so far, guys on Oasis did do an audit on our smart contracts, and we are confident enough to go into production. But definitely, if anyone is interested in this kind of stuff, you are more than invited to do so and to dig into our code. Finally, for the hackathon, here are the links. I hope this slides will be shared with you guys at the end. But essentially, if you go to Apillon.io, you will come sooner or later to our GitHub and our docs. Everything is on the website. And on our GitHub, you will find the source code specifically for the embedded wallets. If you're building something, so if you decide to go outside of the scope regarding embedded wallets, and you want to build something else for the hackathon, that's also possible. But general approach would be you come to Apillon, you configure a service, you receive an API key and secret, and then you have two angles. So you can either run your own backend, which is centralized, to hide the API secrets from the client side, because if you are hosting on IPFS, the website has to be static. This is kind of well known. But you can also do some calls from the client side using Next.js and similar solutions which have server-side rendering. So yeah, this is it from my angle. I think I introduced Apillon, introduced the embedded wallet, showed the demo, so you guys kind of understand what we are all about. If you have further questions, or you are really digging this embedded wallets, and you would like to do something that we have not come up with, also feel free to reach out, have a chat with us. We will give you every support we possibly can during this hackathon. So yeah, we are very open for that. So yeah, thank you very much. And I would like now, if anyone has any questions, really help you out and answer them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nino. I really, there's a lot to unpack there, but I really like the comparison to Firebase. I think a lot of retail people might not know Firebase, but it's sort of is powering, the majority of applications that people use on a daily basis. And,
Yeah.
that's what I think of, when I think of embedded wallets, when I think of account abstraction. I also like the comparison to like account abstraction squared or abstraction on abstraction. That's I think I think that's what we need. We need layers and layers and layers of abstraction. I think the user
Yeah.
experience right now, is not great for attracting new users. And
Yeah,
we've seen this
I
even.
fully agree. Like, comparing state of Web3 with Web2, it comes with, there is a reason why Web2 is slightly forward, because it has what, 20-25 years of tooling, UX refinement, going back and forth and just pushing the limit of frameworks we have, which kind of become more and more abstracted, and it becomes easier and easier to build with them. And in Web3, we're still solving stuff on protocol level. So, that's why we are rigid. That's why the UX is still not there. But we're long enough in Web3 right now that we figured out that this path is definitely the path to have. And it is becoming more and more tangible from what we are integrating, because there are solutions right now on L2 which are very stable, and very reliable. Inputs and outputs are very clear, and they happen all the time, so they can be turned into a service. Oasis is a perfect case of this. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably what I think what I find most cool about like what you guys are doing with Pax Keys is like it's sort of the first time, or one of the first times that we're in Web3 like innovating on pace with user experience innovation in Web2, right? Like Web2 is trying to figure out passkeys, and we're like right there with them.
yes.
So I think that's really cool. It shows just how fast sort of our space can adopt new technologies. Maybe it was a little rough for a while, but at the same time, we have a very passionate community, and developers who are going to try to accelerate things, and catch up to Web2. I guess one of my questions was about, I know this presentation was on the account abstraction, embedded wallets and passkeys for the hackathon. But as you were speaking, I saw some of the other services that you offered. For example, you use Crust for storage. We actually have a partnership with Crust for confidential storage, and I was wondering if things like that would be interesting for this hackathon as well. Two other ideas I had.
Definitely, yeah. So from the perspective of Crust, we are really good, not just partners but friends with Crust team.
They're a great team, right?
And yeah, they're great. And we've been always asking and pushing. What about encryption? We cannot really go into either enterprise or any serious clients that might want to store some maybe business documents, and it becomes a problem, right? And they said they have this experiment going on with Oasis where it is possible to encrypt stuff, but they never made it to their general roadmap where this would become a thing that we can, as integrators, utilize. So definitely, if anyone here has an idea, of how could this be integrated and further used by us, it's an angle we would love to explore, and integrate and further support. So yeah, like you said, we are not focusing straight just on the embedded wallets. If you guys see any other connection between what Apillon does, and I hope I did explain well enough on
Very
how
well.
we're thinking and what we want to achieve, and you see your own thing where Oasis makes sense in this, oh my god, this would be the bomb. So in such a scenario, I'm available, and we will cater you, from the perspective of UI or design or whatever you need, to achieve something like that.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, like on the Oasis side, we're also here to support you, whether that be, from the development side or just, encouraging you that like this is something that we'd be interested in and is a good idea. We're here to support our hackathon participants.
Yeah.
Two other ideas I had. Again, I just want to shoot these off, and maybe they are interesting to you. I saw that you guys are working with Kilt for DID. I was just thinking like verified credentials are sort of in that realm. That's a large I guess track, or one of the things that we suggested people work on in the hackathon. That could be a way to somehow find a way to work with both Apillon on the Kilt DID storage and Oasis with verified credentials, and perhaps get you involved in both tracks. And the last one was Phala and Oasis are similar in the fact that we use TEs, but I would be interested in seeing if we can extend Oasis as an alternative option to Phala, or combine with Phala to offer greater levels of security, greater levels of confidential compute. I think that these are other areas that Oasis would be interested in exploring, as it would essentially strengthen sort of the connection between Oasis and Apillon, and how all these components fit together.
I love both of these ideas, and I can also give some technical inputs on this, like what are the challenges there that Oasis could solve. So specifically regarding Kilt and DIDs, and DID as a standard, it defines everything on how DIDs are made, what attestation are, who is the claimer, who is verifier, who is a tester, everything is there, but the standard does not really define or solve the issue of where do you store these DIDs, right? So DID is basically a JSON file, which then you use to log in. Well, the issue right now is that if you want to use Kilt DIDs, you need to have additional extension. Like it's another Chrome extension that you have to have, and this extension is able to consume the DID, and then when you log in using Kilt, you present this DID out of the extension, and you sign it, etc. So in this case, and we were already thinking about it. Oasis is a perfect place to store this and bypass the extensions, right? So DID storage on Oasis using maybe passkey, so almost the same as embedded wallets, but the result is different. It's not a private key encryption, but instead is a DID encryption. Perfect use case. And regarding Phala, we do have an open sourced project that we built ourselves, and it also comes with front end fully built, and we call it Schrodinger's NFT. Essentially, what this thing does is
what's so funny? That was actually my fourth question. What is a Schrodinger NFT? So yes. it's funny you got there. It's the one that jumped out at me, on that page. I was like, that sounds pretty cool.
I'm going to describe it. I'm not going to demo it now for you guys, but if you take it as an open source, it's built, I think, in Vue. So again, very easy and approachable to enter and start fiddling with it. But what this thing does, it allows you to build your own NFT collection, and then say, I'm going to use this and this and this specific NFT to encrypt a file, right? So how we handle this is we put a file into TE, basically in this case on Phala, and we use the NFT to encrypt it. And then this file is sent to IPFS. So now what happens is whoever has this NFT is able to decrypt this file, no one else, right? And this happens within TE. So you have the guarantee that, so what you could do then, like the Schrodinger's reference comes from the fact that you see the file, but you don't know in what state it is inside until you have the NFT. So that's the joke part. But yeah, it's essentially file delivery system over encryption, with where the NFT is the key to unlock it, basically. So if you were to build your own collection, let's say you're a band and you have some music, you would encrypt all that music. And as people are buying those NFTs and minting them, they are able to decrypt the music and listen to it. Maybe this would be an example. Or you have a text file with all the passwords, you encrypt it with NFT, and I don't know, at some point you send the NFT to your wife or family member, and now they have access to your password. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And as long as you trust TE, it's as good as blockchain in itself. So again, one path to explore. If you take our Schrodinger's NFT and you are able to hook it up to Oasis, do the same process. Again, perfect use case. And thank you, Will, for looking at our offering and knowing so much of what we have in bringing this up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've been on a sort of kick for UI UX improvements and where Oasis can fit into that, because I really do think that while compelling dApps were what sort of drove momentum in the last few cycles, I think UI UX improvements are what's going to drive it this cycle. Like, I don't know if finding the next great dApp is really possible until we can also bring in the next billion people, 500 million people into Web3. Whether that's in any sector, whether that's DID, DeFi, gaming. I just think UI UX sort of is a generalizable concept that applies to it all, and sort of as a 2x, 3x multiplier for the industry. That's at least how I've been thinking about it recently.
I fully agree.
So I think we're at the top of the hour, about 4 minutes left. Doesn't look like we have too many questions coming in from the audience, but you can always jump into the Oasis Discord, ask us questions there. Where can they connect to you, Nino?
So I can post my maybe Telegram. So this would get you directly chatting with me, and then I will either send you guys to our developers or to a specific developer, or I will just help you as much as I can. So this is my Telegram on the chat.
I think you have to share your screen for them to see it.
No, I sent it here in the chat.
Okay.
In the StreamYard. So yeah, it's public. Just feel free, write to me, and we'll figure out. Even though, like, whatever question you might have or just want to say hi, I'm very approachable from this part, and I will definitely answer. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for that October 23rd announcement. I think we're all eagerly waiting, and I think it should be a tremendous sort of launch party for our collaboration, and hopefully some ideas in this hackathon can get pushed, and maybe we can even collaborate further in the future. And besides that, I guess any last closing thoughts before we sign off?
I would say at least thank you, Oasis team. You've been massively supported. So for anyone out there listening and thinking, working with Oasis, I can firsthand tell you, guys are great, tech is great, and they're great people. So that's it from my side.
Oh, thank you so much, Nino. I appreciate it. And I think, the feeling is entirely mutual. We've had a great relationship with Apillon so far, and you guys, I don't know, it's incredible what you built. And like you said, we only started this at the beginning of the summer, and now it's ready for people to hack on. 3 months, 4 months later. So that's especially in this industry, that's a tremendous feat, and I applaud you guys. Anyway, thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully developers, this has inspired you to build something really cool for the hackathon. And anyone who's not a developer, just a community member listening, hopefully this is just got you excited about some of the things that are working on Oasis. Definitely try out Apillon when it first comes out, or the embedded wallet when it first comes out, and stay tuned for more announcements. Anyway, have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.